Well, hello there. I'm Claire Calico, and today we're playing Chaos Child. I remember we were very close to the end. Oh, there's something I forgot to do. I gotta do that real quick. There we go. Oh yeah. So last time, we're very close. Very, very, very close to the end. Last time we found the killer. The killer is Sarika. And I'm pretty sure Kurisu died? I don't know, it seemed like it. Um and now they're saying that we're the killer. The character we're playing as, they're saying that they're the killer, but they're not. We also found that Sarika, we looked in Sarika's room, and she had a whole bunch of the sumo stickers. The ones that are all over town. Oh yeah, we're on chapter 10, and I think there's 11 or 12. Either way, we're very close. Bum bum. It was before I started elementary school. I couldn't remember the exact date. She was my next door neighbor, and would come over and play a lot. Oh, and here comes my cat. I don't know what she's gonna do. She's got plans in her little kitty head. There you go. Yes, that's right. I was born in 1997. So, if it was the same year I started elementary school, it would be around 2004? We played together almost every day. She was like a little sister to me. I remember that at first I read her picture books and picture books that I'd only just learned to read myself. And her family was a lot like mine. Right. I'll tell you about mine, though. Bum, bum. I'm gonna turn the sound up on my side. I think it's plenty loud on your side. Yeah. And I'm gonna move over a little, too. Yeet. I was only a child, and both my parents worked. They both worked at an IT, I always want to call it it. An IT company, an IT company, back when there weren't very many of those. I think they met each other there. Work was all they cared about. It was only years later that they learned that normal people didn't eat all 3 meals with a babysitter. About the time I started elementary school, I started going online using one of their old computers. It was common for me to be up past midnight even then, but my parents didn't know. I think they didn't care. I can remember at least 2 birthdays I can remember 2 birthdays where they were just where they just left me a present and a note saying they were sorry they couldn't make it. The year after the last one, there wasn't a present, and year after that, there wasn't even a note. Part of the way through elementary school, I mostly stopped going. I think it was 3rd grade. My mom happened to be home, so she picked up the phone when the teacher called. She looked annoyed when she talked to them. She said her husband was the one who took care of all that, and hung up. She didn't tell me to go to school or even that I didn't have to go, and Dad didn't even know the teacher's name. At the time I learned online that this was what they called low-level child neglect. Sarika was the same. Actually, she was worse. She always used to tell me I was lucky because I got a card. Oh, a credit card. I didn't have a babysitter then, so I had to get my own food. Once I learned about how to use the card, I would split the food I bought with Sarika. I don't think her parents hit her or anything either. Oh, there was one time she came over to my house really scared. Her parents had tried to force her to go to a hospital, she said. No, I don't know the details, but they said all kinds of mean things about how she was crazy and how she wasn't normal. So I think it was a psychologist or a psychiatric or someone who worked at a hospital like that. She cried a long, long time. I let her stay in my room for a while. My parents never cleaned it, and they never looked inside it. Yeah, thinking back, we were probably together all the time when I was little. No, I've never met Sarika's parents. She said they were almost never home. I don't think I ever went to her home either. They didn't have a computer, so there was no need to go. Huh? I'm not sure. I don't think I went to school a lot. I never saw her playing with anyone but me, and we were busy finding information on the internet, so we were much smarter than... No, never mind. When we were in the 4th grade, 2 years before the earthquake, we heard a rumor about Amy, the urban legend. We both went to the basement in the hospital to look for it. Yes, AH Tokyo General Hospital. We liked stuff like that, both me and her. That's where we saw the experiment being done on Minamisawa. We got scared and ran. I couldn't even imagine what it was that I was seeing back then. That was the first time she and I snuck in anywhere. Sarika? I think she was scared. I remember thinking that I needed to protect her. But we were both about equally excited. It was a chance to know something no one else knew. Sarika told me I should go to school and tell everyone what I saw, and so I did. Everyone told me I was lying, of course. So then I started going even less. I started researching the sumo stickers and stuff. We tried making a webpage about it together. My cat's trying to climb me. Are you climbing? We were in 6th grade. The new Generation Madness happened. That was 2009. It was like we'd gone crazy. At first, we couldn't believe that something like that was happening in the city we lived in. We spent almost a whole day glued to the computer following the news. I remember when all that happened. When something big like that's going on, if you take your eyes off the internet for even a few hours, you'll get, oh, what happened? Oh, I pushed a button, that's what happened. When the earthquake happened, Cirque and I were near the zero front building. Nishijo was doing something there, and we wanted to see. And then there was this high-pitched noise and everything went white. And then it happened. At first we didn't think it was an earthquake. We thought it was a bomb or something. The ground bounced up and down like a trampoline, and several of the telephone poles near us fell over. I could hear screaming and the sound of breaking glass. Someone yelled, "Earthquake!" And that's how I knew it was an earthquake. Anyway, Sarika and I ran away so we wouldn't get caught up in the people panicking. We didn't know where we were running, but we didn't want to be there. We got caught up in the crowds, and Sarika and I were quickly separated. When that happened, I got scared, and all of a sudden, I couldn't move. I got pushed over and fell, and then I crawled behind something. The shaking had stopped, but what had scared me more than the quake was the way everyone around me had changed in an instant. I spent a long time in that spot, unable to move. The idea of going home never occurred to me. There was no way I could rely on my parents for help. And at the time, I thought that no place in Shibuya was still standing. I didn't know what to do. And then I found Sarika passed out near me. She must have been pushed down and hit her head, or maybe she hadn't been able to handle what she was seeing because she passed out. I decided that I had to save her. The information online said that Yoyogi was relatively undamaged and the hospitals were accepting patients. I carried her on my back and started walking there. And then... No, never mind. Anyway, I just kept walking, and finally I reached AH Tokyo General Hospital, which had been turned into a temporary shelter. Sarika looked like she was in pain the whole way there. She didn't wake up. I saw my parents there, and then I collapsed from a terrible headache. That's all I remember from the earthquake. When I woke up, I was in Aoba dorm, and a year had passed while I was in a coma. And that's where I met Nono and the others. And that's how we met. Sorry, I'm fine. I heard what happened then from Nono and Sarika. Sarika woke up at the hospital and saw me unconscious. She stayed with me the whole time, and when AH Tokyo General overflowed, I was moved to one of the other hospitals in their network, and she came with me. She wasn't in good shape either, and I guess she didn't want to go home. She refused to leave my side, and when the people from the hospital saw her, they put her into counseling, I mean. Her parents died in the earthquake, she said. So did mine. Given the circumstances, the hospital didn't seem to mind her staying there with me. But once things started to calm down, they sent her home. She found some relatives who agreed to help her get a place. The one she has now. And then every day she came to visit me in the hospital. No, I don't know. I think she said they were relatives who lived who lived a long way away. No, I don't know their names, I'm sorry. Some time passed, and since there was nobody to take me in, I was moved to Aoba dorm. But she still stayed with me the whole time. Then she met Nono, I guess. They were good friends. When I woke up, after more than a year, I had trouble moving. Nona helped me with physical therapy. Sarika would come check in on me all the time, and Nona would happily tell her my progress. Family was very, very important to Nono, and Sarika was the one person outside of the family she called by her first name, not her last. The two of them would go out and visit all the different crepe shops in Shibuya. And since Sarika didn't have any interest in makeup or clothes, Nona would take her shopping for them. They really were good friends. The best of friends. But after my therapy ended and I could walk, I started going to school more and more. Yes, that middle school. I was given special permission to be in second year along with the other kids my age. Sarika did the same as a first-year student. After the earthquake while I was in a coma, she'd started going to school. It was hard living on her own, but Nona would take care of her, and her relatives sent her plenty of money. She seemed to be doing better than she was at her old house. No, there was nothing strange, I think. I went to Hekio Academy because they offered free tuition for orphans of the earthquake. A year later, so did Sarika. We both joined the newspaper club and did things there. It was exactly as you saw it, I think. She spent a lot of time with us at school, but she had her own friends in her own classes. She wasn't part of any of their groups, but it didn't seem like they were ignoring her or anything. I'd never seen her with anybody suspicious, and she wasn't the type of person to keep secrets. When I didn't have a charger, she'd just hand me her phone and would let me use it. That was the kind of girl she was. Yes. Sarika was a normal high school kid, just like us. November 5th, 2015, Thursday. The same time. The streets of Shibuya. Sarika was running. She was out of breath and had a terrible headache. There was sweat all over her body, and it wasn't from exhaustion. Running a few minutes wasn't enough to tire her out. Compared to what she had to do her hold on. I can do it. Compared to what she'd had to do her mind and body to commit the murders, this was nothing at all. Yeah, murderer really can run, can't they? She touched the small cut on her stomach as she ran. She felt slick blood, a sensation she was long since tired of. She would probably have to stitch it up. But if her organs weren't ruptured, she'd be fine. stitch the organs up too. She was used to getting stitches without anesthetic. She didn't even need a towel to bite down on to relieve the pain. The needle didn't even need to be a medical one. It should be. But that's okay. I mean. But this terrible headache was new to her. Sarika stopped when she saw there was no one around. Who? She punched the wound. She punched the wound on her stomach 2 or 3 times. Yeah, that'll take care of that. The sensation of a fierce external pain, a sensation she was used to, ran up her spine. She'd hoped that it would alleviate the pain of her headache. She hoped that her brain would decide the pain on her open wound was more important than the headache. But the headache didn't stop. It felt like a cold needle was being driven into her head with every heartbeat as her mind screamed at her that something was terribly wrong. She knew why. Her head hurt, but her mind was still capable of clarity. Her foe was far stronger than she'd expected. Sp 390 mind control. An unimaginably horrible form of hypnosis which could make anyone do whatever you wanted. When she was an ally, she thought it was the greatest power imaginable. Now that she ally, yeah, okay, there we go. When she was an ally, she thought it was the greatest power imaginable. Now that she was an enemy, it seemed like the worst. Yeah. That's not right, she laughed to herself. She hadn't been an ally. She hadn't been a helper or a conspirator either. If you could call him anything, he was a blackmailer. The phone in her hand trembled. It wasn't the one she used when she pretended to be a normal person. She destroyed that a while ago, so that the police couldn't track her. It was the one it was the one he'd given her for communicating with him. With who? Who is this? It probably belonged to someone they talked to, or perhaps he'd used mind control to steal it from someone who never even knew it was gone. I had to take a breath. She stared at the screen for a moment, but finally decided to answer it. How's my stomach? I don't know. Huh?
嘘をつけ。私の行動を予想していたくせに。やっぱりかと、お前の思考が言っていたぞ。
He must have found something funny because the man on the other end laughed. Sarika's voice was filled with rage. He knew, and yet he asked anyway. He was either a sadist or some kind of sick hedonist. The methods he came up with for his murders always felt like a big
ど
joke.
うして宮代拓郎を主犯に仕立て上げた一連の事件は全て南沢千里の犯行として決着させるはずだったろう。
俺に何か再婚したとでも言うのか？
Of course you were, asshole, she thought. A warrant had been put out for Mayashido only a few hours after Nono Kurisu's death. And in a way, that would normally never be possible. There was no way they'd given a miner's real name out in that span of time unless he had used his power.
一体どういうつもりだ。
別に知りすぎたんだよ。俺でもお前に譲歩してんだぞ。
何？
お前の力には随分助けられたからな。本来ならあいつを殺さなきゃいけないところを犯人として逮捕されるくらいで終わりにしてやるっつってんだよ。
Yeah, but then when more murders happen, they'll find out that he's not the guy because he was in jail. She hated the fact that she was on the phone. Without being able to see him, she couldn't read his mind. She wanted to know what he was really thinking.
南沢千里より彼を犯人として祭り上げた方が都合が良くなっただけだろう。余計なことを知っている彼は世間に出てこなくなる。その上、自分の姉と妹を殺した主犯ということで話題性もつく。その方が力士シールに注目も集まるからな。しかも犯人として逮捕されて終わりだと。宮代拓郎は最初の犯行である9月7日時点ですでに18歳だ。犠牲者は7人。未成年としては犯罪史上最多。今の世論の流れなら十中八九極刑になる。そんなことを私がわからないとでも。
そんなの裁判やってみなければわからないじゃないか。
Yeah, there's only one way to find out,
どうせお
right?
前が捜査するんだろうが。
Sarika yelled into the phone, and the man started laughing. She didn't know if it was because she'd yelled or because his laughter pissed her off. But the headache got worse, which only made her madder.
やっぱいいなお前は。こっちに戻ってこないか。お前の力は俺らにとって貴重なもんだし、頭も切れる。度胸もあるしな。
ふざけるな。彼が無事であること、これがお前に手を貸す唯一の条件だったはずだ。
相変わらずの石頭だな。
それ以外のことに私の価値などない。
Attacker Miyashiro's survival. That was the one thing she cared about since she came into this world. Being a murderer, being an accomplice to murder, using her mind-reading powers to find psychics. She'd done it all for that reason. But now...
じゃあ聞くけどよ。お前、これからどうするつもりなんだ？まさか、あいつを連れて逃げる気か？
Maybe. What, are you the mind reader? Sarika managed to stop herself from speaking. He was right. She thought it was the only way.
そんなことできるわけねえだろ。
やってみなければわからない。お前の力は確かに脅威に見えるが、委員会の末端ができることには実は限界があるんじゃないのか。
That's why he'd come to her for help, right? She thought that this was her only chance to save Mayashiro.
現に彼はまだ警察にもお前の手にも渡っていない。居場所がわからないんだろう。
確かに俺は 端どころか下っ端の下っ端。中数メンバーすら知らない雑魚だけどよ。
And then he spoke in a voice that sounded a little too deliberate. She could sense his lips curling into a smile.
試しにフレーシアあたりから調べてみるかな。
She finally gave a small gasp. She thought that that's where he was hiding too. I guess it's not a very good hiding spot then. If everyone knows that's where he is. How did he know about Frieza? When she whispered that to herself, he said,
フレーシアの話なんざ何度も聞かされてる。俺があいつやものからどれだけ信頼されてると思ってんだ。
Who?
死ね、クズが。
Sarika hung up the phone and started to run, ignoring the pounding in her head.
なるほどな。
So that's it, Kunasato said in a voice that was almost too soft to hear. And then she put her hand to her head and started to think. Like Winnie the Pooh. Think, think, think. I told Kunasato the same thing I just told Shinjo. Shinjo had brought me back to Frieza and given me a stern warning not to leave again. Then he'd quickly gone back to his investigation. In theory, looking for me.
本当にもうバカなことはやめてくださいね、宮代先輩。
まったくよ。有村ちゃんなんて泣きながら先輩が逮捕されちゃうって大変だったんだから。
泣いてません。
Both Aimura and Momose were worried about me. I was glad for that. The only ones who knew the truth were the three of them, Shinjo, Kazuki, and Uki. We may have had different goals, but if nothing else, they knew I wasn't the killer, and they were working to find the real killer, Sarika. Only now did I realize how stupid it was for me to run away. Compared to this morning, the thick fog in my brain had lifted a little.
ノノ、僕は大丈夫だから。
Sup 288. Don't think about revenge. Don't do anything dangerous. What are they? I don't know what those, like, where it has, like, the letters and numbers sometimes. Live the same life as someone else does, but don't get buried among the crowd. The words in the letter were like heavy weights keeping me grounded.
宮代、有村。
Uh-huh. Yeah. Kunasato turned away from the computer screen and towards us. Her expression was even sterner than
前にも言
usual.
ったと思うが、渋谷地震の際に目撃された白い光が、お前たちギガロマニアックスの発生に関係していると私は確信している。震源域の中心付近にかつてプラネタリウムがあったのは知っているだろう。そのプラネタリウムはある企業によって買い取られたのだが、新庄さんの聞き込みによれば、それ以降不審な男たちが目撃されるようになったそうだ。しかもそれと並行して多数のリアルブートらしき現象の目撃情報がある。さらにその企業は例の AH 東京総合病院と深い関係があることも分かった。
つまりどういうことですか？
ここからは推測だが、プラネタリウムはあの地下施設と同じくギガロマニアックスの実験か何かに使われていたのではないかと思う。ところがあの地震でプラネタリウムは破壊され、いや、あるいは逆にプラネタリウムでの実験にトラブルがあって地震を引き起こしたのかもしれないが、とにかく実験中だったギガロマニアックスの発生因子とでも言うべきものが周囲に拡散されてしまった。私はそれが白い光だと考えている。
有村ちゃんたちの脳からギガロマニアックスの能力を引き出してしまった原因物質ってことかしらね。物質じゃなくて電磁波みたいなものだとかエネルギーとかそういうものかもしれないけど。
ああ、つまりアレルゲンみたいなものですね。
全く違う。ちょっとばかり聞きかじっただけの言葉を使うな。バカは黙っていろ。
Armor frowned. The two of them still weren't getting along.
こうして光を浴びてしまった多数の人間の脳に発生因子が与えられたと考えられるが、ただし全員が覚醒したわけじゃない。これまでの研究によれば、脳がまだ発達段階で活発に活動している若い人間、その中でも脳への負荷が非常に高い事象を経験した者だけに能力の発現が見られる。
はい。
I nodded. I knew exactly what she was talking about.
能力者の能力はその出来事というより、その出来事に対してどんな心理的作用が働いたかに依存している。
I'm trying to nod. It kind of looks like, mm-hmm.
その話、みんなでしたことあります。どんなことを望んだかで能力が決まるってことですよね。
ありていに言えばそういうことになるな。
When I woke up from the earthquake, I'd felt a lot of stress at the way my body wouldn't move. I never wanted to go through that again. Not only was there the stress of not being able to move, there was the terror that came with wondering if I might stay like that forever. That's why I'd gain the power of psychokinesis. When I was telling that to Kunasato, of my mind flashed back to how Nono helped me with my physical therapy. She'd done her best to cheer me up. At times kind and gentle, and at times strict. She was always there for me. But now she was.
ダメだ、しっかりしろよ、宮代拓。
I forced myself to snap out of it. And then I realized that Kunasato was staring at me. What? Is there something on my face?
宮代拓の能力はサイコキネシス。その発生要因は過酷なリハビリ。私もお前のことを調べてそう思い込んでいた。
For some reason, she looked frustrated.
思い込んでいたって。
安易な判断と思い込み、私もまだまだ未熟だ。本当ならもっと早く尾上セリカにたどり着けていたかもしれないのに。
Huh?
どういうことですか？
今も言ったろ。能力者はいずれも地震の時に ギガロマニアックスの発生因子を浴びて能力を発現させている。
Mm-hmm.
おそらくあの過酷な地震が彼らに強いストレスと願望を与え、それが引き金となった。お前もそうだな、有村。
ええ。
That's what she'd said before. That her powers had awoken during the earthquake? And that the cause was that she wanted to know the truth.
山添由紀もそうだ。佐久間先生からのレポートによれば、能力の発現はやはり渋谷地震の直後だという。それとパイロキネシストのハイダリコ、あの女のこともようやく調べ終えたが。
Kunisata pointed to a corner of her screen. It was the corner that had the clock, and she pointed at the time. Oh, it was displaying the data about the pyrokinetic that had threatened us.
ハイダリコは渋谷地震で顔に火傷を負い、他の能力者と同様、その直後に覚醒している。絶望感による過度のストレスと、他の人間に自分と同じ絶望を与えてやりたいという暗い願望が発生因子と結びついたらしい。これで分かったろ。もちろん全ての能力者を調べたわけではないが、私が知る限り全員例の白い光を浴びた直後に能力を得ている。1年以上のタイムラグがあったものなど、私の持っているデータの中にはいないんだよ。
I started to understand what Kunisata was saying. I was trying to say. There we go. I read it. And then I felt an awful sensation.
情報を精査したところによると、能力者の力が発現する際には必ず大きな副作用が起こる。耐え難いほどにひどい頭痛だ。これは血管拡張によるものだと思う。頭痛の原因の中では極めてポピュラーで、片頭痛と診断される痛みも血管が拡張するために起こる。ギガロマニアックスの場合の血管拡張は発生因子が引き金となって、ドーパミンとそれに類した神経伝達物質が過剰に分泌されるのが原因というデータが出ているが、
Then she paused. She was probably giving me time to think.
そこで宮代に質問だ。お前はリハビリの時にひどい頭痛を経験したことはあるのか？
That wasn't enough time to think. A longer pause. Just kidding. I tried to think. Yeah, see? It wasn't enough time, huh? But I couldn't remember any pain in my head. Just from the rest of my body, particularly my joints.
いえ、おそらくないと思います。
なら他の能力者と同じように地震の際にひどい頭痛を経験した瞬間があったはずだ。
I could hear my heart beat loudly. My vision started to blur and my heart beat so loud that I could hear it.
その時お前は何をしていた？
When the headache, I had a bad feeling. What was I doing then?
いや、正確に聞こう。地震の時にお前は何を望んだ？例えば危険を回避するために瓦礫を意のままに動かしたいと望んだのか？それでサイコキネシスを手に入れたのか？
そんなこと望んでなんかいない。あの時僕が望んだのは
Sariko, save me. Please, please. What was it? What's the wish? I gotta know. For a moment, I felt like the headache I had experienced during the earthquake had come back, and I grabbed my head in pain. I tried to get the idea out of my head, but it wouldn't disappear. No. That couldn't be right.
どうした？
I'm gonna stretch. And get water. Oh wow! It was cloudy all day and now the sun's out. And it's going through the leaves. Okay, back to this. Kunasato stared at me. Her expression was as stern as ever. Eventually, she did something on her computer. She's playing, like, solitaire or something. Just kidding. It displayed a different set of data than before. Yeah, hold on, I need to go do something real quick and then play solitaire. For some reason, it felt like I was being driven further and further into a dark cave.
これは尾上のカルテだ。日付は2009年11月21日。AH 東京総合病院の系列病院に残っていた。お前は地震の後、ここに入っていたと言っていたな。ということは、お前に付き添っていた尾上も、この病院でカウンセリングを受けたわけだ。ところが、尾上の記録は、これ以前には存在しない。そうでしたね、百瀬さん。
We couldn't find her family register or anything else, Momose said. But her voice sounded unreal and far away.
ありえないですよ。だって、尾上は小さい時から僕と。
家が隣同士だったらしいな。
そうです。
当時、お前が住んでいたマンションは6階の角部屋。隣の住人の名前は新井。経営していた会社を引退した年金受給者の老夫婦だ。子供は設けていない。
My heart beat louder. It was aggravating me. It was a strange sensation. I was hearing all those words, but I couldn't understand what they meant. Even my breathing was getting faster.
違います。尾上は隣に住んでいて、両親から無視されていて。
その両親とやらに会ったことはあるのか？ないんだろ。尾上には当時他に友達がいなかったそうだが、そもそも地震以前に尾上が誰か第三者と話しているのを見たことがあるか？
それは。
I hadn't. But that was because she didn't have any friends. When we sometimes went outside, she always went with me. And she never left my side for an instant. Kunasato tapped at the keyboard, and the screen changed.
これはお前のカルテだ。その系列病院に残っていたものだ。
If only I'd found it sooner, she whispered. At some point, I started crying. I couldn't see the screen through my blurry
お
vision.
前が昏睡状態に陥った原因は不明とされている。発生因子のことが解明できなかったんだろう。だがその代わり別の病院の精神科の診察記録が追記されている。
Another hospital? Psychiatrist? I'd never been to another hospital. It must have been some mistake.
2006年の日付か。お前が小学3年の時だな。イマジナリーフレンドへの過度の傾倒と診断されている。
Imaginary friend?
簡単に言えば空想上の友人のことだ。
空想？
That's not true. A voice in my head said over and over.
イマジナリーフレンド自体は珍しいものじゃない。そもそも病気ではなく、幼児の3割近くが空想上の友達を持っている。何もない空間に話しかける子供に対して、幽霊が見えていると決めつけるオカルトマニアたちがいるが、そういうマニアの話を聞いたことくらいあるだろ。
嘘です。
だが思春期までイマジナリーフレンドを持続している人間となると、その数は激減する。乖離性同一性障害とは区別されているが、私に言わせれば脳の状態はほぼ同一だ。お前の話に出てくる地震前の尾上はお前を常に羨んでいたな。同じネグレクト状態にありながらお前の方がマシだと。
I tried to yell at her to stop, but my throat hurt too much for me to speak. The taste of blood filled my mouth. I must have bit my lip. I started crying without even realizing it.
イマジナリーフレンドの大半は友好的なものとして存在する。それで自分の承認欲求を満たすためだ。
For desire for esteem? Wait, how to... Let's look at that. A general term used to describe... A general term for the desire or esteem and respect from others, or perhaps from one's ideal self. This desire is one possessed by all humans, and is a fundamental and biological desire in the same way as a desire for food, sex, or sleep. With those with strong or too weak to desire for esteem can have trouble learning to communicate with others, and some of them are actually suffering from mental disorder.
違う。
自分に不利益な事実を空想上の友人に押し付けるのは、むしろ同一性障害に多く見られる症状なんだが。
違うって言ってるだろ。
Kunisata's words were cold and cumbersome.
頭がおかしい。まともじゃないと言われたのは尾上じゃない。それを尾上に押し付けたお前なんだよ、宮代拓。
嘘をつくな。
宮代先輩。
I felt a soft hand on my shoulder and turned to look. Now who could that be? Ah. It was Arimura. She looked at me like I was a young child in need of tender care. Stop it. Don't look at me that way.
黒里さんは嘘はついてないです。
All the feelings inside me went cold when I heard her words. Aimura said she was telling the truth? So she was.
だけど、そんなこと。
I don't want it to be true. Because if it was...
ノノを殺した尾上は、この僕が。
Yeah, so I guess... No... I don't know.
ノノを殺したのは、結局僕ってことに。
Well, not really, I don't think, because you didn't... Uh,
そこまでにしてもらおう。
I
ふ
don't...
の里美よ。
I suddenly heard a voice. I turned around and saw someone in front of the door. It was someone I knew well. Whoa!
尾上
That's right. It was Sarika Onoe. She was different in every way from how she'd been at the newspaper club. There was an expression on her face that I couldn't read at all.
貴様。
待て。争う意思はない。
ふざけるな。
本当だ。有村ひなえ、それをしまってくれないか。
But with the sword? But it's a cool sword. You can't put it away. Arimura had unleashed her D-sword. She was glaring at Sarika and pointing it straight at
お
her.
前たちに危害を加えるつもりなら、こんなに堂々と姿は見せない。
Wait. Wait. Why was Sarika here? What was she doing? Was she saying she wasn't here to fight? It wasn't here to fight to make me let my guard down and then kill her? No, forget that. Why did she kill Nono? All these thoughts slipped through my mind. I could really think... all these thoughts slipped through my mind before I could really think about any of them. But then they all came together. From the biggest question of all.
目の前のこいつを本当に僕が。
そう。今思ってる通りだよ。宮代拓。
Sarika was looking at me dead in the eye. She was reading my mind. It felt like she could read everything I was thinking.
私はお前に生み出された存在だ。あの時にな。
What she said was the one thing I didn't want to admit. So I found myself looking toward Arimura, who had drawn her D-sword and readied it again. Arimura nodded slowly, without taking her eyes off of Sarika. I knew that that it was her way of saying she was telling the truth, but still, my heart refused to admit it.
嘘だ。そんなの。
Because Sarika was important to me. What was important to me as Nono. A phone started to vibrate in someone's pocket. Sarika's expression changed infestmently?
私のスマホだ。ポケットに手を入れるぞ。他のものは出さない。だから、いいな。
Sarika looked at Arimura as she spoke. Arimura was instantly able to tell if she was telling the truth.
言ってることは本当です。スピーカーにしろ。
疑り深い女だ。
Serika nodded and took out her phone. She went to put it on speaker mode, but before she did, she looked up. Her eyes met with mine.
宮代拓郎、もう一度心の準備をしておけ。お前はこれまでと同じかそれ以上のショックを受けることになる。お前の心が壊れるのを見たくない。
一体何を。
What are you saying, Serika? Before I could ask, she put her hand she put her hand to the phone and answered the call.
よう、フリージアには着いたか？
I'd heard that voice before, but I couldn't tell whose it was. No, that wasn't right. I didn't want to. It was rare to hear his voice from Serika's phone anyway. Whenever he needed something, he would always call me or Nono.
どうしてここにいると分かったというのは愚問か。
まあな。ああ言えばお前は全力でそこへ向かうだろう。
I'd never seen Serika spit like that. And this time her face was red with anger.
どうだ？タクルはいるか？
When I heard the name Takuru, I shivered. I knew it. There was no way I could mistake that voice. I knew why Serika had told me to be ready for a shock. That voice.
なあタクル、いるんだろ？俺だよ。
It was the voice of my father, Wataru Sakuma. I couldn't speak. The ground beneath me seemed to shift, and I felt sick. The phone seemed to be... The phone seemed to stick out clearly while everything else faded away.
佐久間先生。
そういうことか。
こちらの動きはみんな筒抜けだったわけね。
おいタクル、聞いてんのか？もしもーし。
父さん。なんで？
Why not? Just kidding.
おお、やっぱいるじゃねえか。なんだ、まだお前から聞いてねえのか？
Told me what? It told me what? And why was why was Dad calling Serika's phone?
全部の絵を描いてたのは俺と尾上だよ。
I didn't understand what he meant. But I could hear my heart pounding loudly.
今回起きた一連の事件の最初からな。結構苦労したんだぞ。尾上と二人でいろいろと準備して。
一緒にするなよ。
I flinched away from her. Sarika was staring at the phone with a look on her face that I'd never seen before.
失礼ねえな。事実じゃねえか。二人で一緒に頑張って殺してきただろ。未来予知の大谷も感情誘導の高柳も思考盗撮の更新でバイトしてた兄ちゃんはなんつったっけな。まあいいか。渡部も灰田もゆいもののも皆俺とお前の成果だろ。
That was my dad's voice. There was no mistaking it. The names Yui and Nono echoed in my mind. accomplished together? Oh, that was this. I thought that was in my room, and I was like, wait. Okay. I felt like I needed to vomit. The taste of stomach acid rose into my mouth. I fell to my knees, unable to stand. Drool and vomit dribbled out of the corner of my mouth and onto the floor. Use my cat. I gotta move stuff so she doesn't knock stuff over. There we go. Arimura was saying something to me. I could hear the words, but I couldn't understand them. This was a dream. It was just a bad dream because... Why would Dad do that?
顔を上げろ。
Dad and Serika had killed them? It killed Yui? Killed Nono? Killed 2 of our family?
こっちを見ろ。
What? What the hell? That didn't make any sense at all.
何なんだよ。
こっちを見ろ、宮代拓。
No! Alright, fine. Our eyes met. Serika was looking at me with her expression fierce.
大丈夫だ。
She looked straight into my
私が
eyes.
いる。大丈夫だ。
Fine? How could anything be fine?
ずいぶんな言葉だな。
Serika's eyes narrowed as she looked at Kunisato.
安心しろ、久野里美代。今さらお前と分かり合おうなどと思っていない。お前たちの側に立ちたいともな。
Kunisato and Arimura went pale.
お前。そうか。それがお前の能力か。
思考洞察。
頭の回転が速いな。そう。柿田博則と同じものだ。
おい、タグル。聞こえてっか？
Maybe.
つうわけでよ。とっとと名乗り出てくれ。
父さん、なんで、どういうことなんだよ。
言っただろ。俺と尾上がやったことだって。
だからそれってどういうことなんだよ。
佐久間航は委員会の人間なんだ。
Serika said the word like she was disgusted by it. And then Kunisato heard it. Her face filled with anger.
正確には委員会の末端の組織。病院の地下でギガロマニアックスの研究をしていた連中の一人だ。連中は渋谷地震の影響でイレギュラーに発生してしまった能力者を邪魔な存在と捉え飼っていた。私はそれに協力していた。宮代拓、お前をその狩りから外すことを条件にな。
I felt like I couldn't breathe. The air was just leaking out of my mouth. Dad was... What?
お前よ。お前本当にタクルを連れて逃げる気か？
お前は約束を保護にした。好きにさせてもらう。
そうじゃなくてよ。そんなこと可能だと思ってんのか？と。ぼちぼちだな。ちょうどいい。テレビつけてみろ。どのチャンネルでもいいからよ。
My cat scratched me. Or kinda, you know. Here we go. Yeah, it seems okay. Oh wait. It was already there.
何？
いいからよ。テレビくらいあんだろ？
Yeah, turn on the TV. Someone probably, a moment say, turned on the TV. The voice of the TV announcer filled the room.
続きまして、渋谷で発生した連続猟奇事件に関する速報です。
Yeah? You got something to say about this little kitty? You do? What do you think about that? Yeah? And what else? Do you think anything else? Is there anything else you gotta say, little kitty? Nope. That's all she's gotta say.
未成年の実名を公表したことにより注目されている今回の事件ですが、先ほど重要参考人として指名手配されている宮代拓君本人から報道機関宛てにメールで連絡が入りました。
Sarika turned and looked at me.
知らない。僕は何もしてない。
そのメールには明日渋谷で開催される渋谷復興祭において衆目の中自らの命を絶つと記載されており、警察はメールの中に犯人しか知り得ない情報、いわゆる秘密の暴露が含まれていたことから、このメールを宮代拓君本人からのものと断定しました。
I could hear myself let out a short scream. What the hell was this? What was going on?
佐久間、お前。
いや、拓郎連れて逃げるなんて言うもんだからよ。どうしたら諦めてくれるかと思ってな。何、自ら命を絶つなんて誇張だよ、誇張。ただ話題性は抜群だろ。復興祭に参加する人間、街中の奴らがタクルの死ぬとこを見物しようと探し回ることになる。フリージアに隠れてたって俺がネットでちょっと情報を流してやればそれで終わりだ。隠れる場所なんてどこにもなくなるぜ。
ゲスが。
お前どうする？タクロを諦めてくれるんなら俺はこれからもお前と組んでやっていきたいと思ってんだ。まだ狩りは残ってるしな。
There was a short silence. Hearing the two of them talk about me didn't seem real. It was like watching the world from the other side of a pane of glass.
わかった。ただし条件が一つある。
おお、なんだ。
お前を殺させろ。
あ？
今どこにいる？殺してやるから教えろよ。
His voice suddenly cut off. There was a heavy silence as he tried to figure out what she meant.
つまり返事はノーってことか。
宮代拓は私が存在する意味そのものだ。彼に害をなす者には指一本触れさせない。
本気で言ってんのかよ。
地震の日に肉体を得てから6年、お前に脅されながら人を殺し、組織のために死体の山を築いてきた私を甘く見るな。
I heard what sounded like an animal's laugh. It was my father's laugh. The one I'd always heard out of a dorm.
強がりってのもなかなか可愛いもんだな。 さっき腹を裂かれたばっかだってのによ。お前、俺を殺せるつもりでいんのか？いいぞ、付き合ってやる。始まりの場所に来な。
始まりの場所。
わかんねえか？今回の事件、いや、6年前の事件も含めて全てが始まった場所だよ。
あそこか。
そう、そこだよ。ついでに時間も合わせようじゃねえか。あの時あの場所でってやつだ。お前の死に場所にはぴったりだろ。もちろんタクルも連れてこいよ。
And then suddenly, I heard a cold electronic beep of an ended call. Everyone but me was looking at Serika and her phone. I was still kneeling on the floor, unable to move.
11月6日0時になりました。次のニュースです。
Oh, 11. Let me see if there's 11 or 12 chapters. If there's 11, maybe. We'll see. We'll probably... Let me look at it. Let me look. Hold on. Don't do anything. I'm looking. Chaos Child. Oh, 11! Wait, we were on 11 this one? Yeah, let's keep going. It's only been like an hour. Each time I took a breath, more cold, nasty sweat poured out of my body. What was going on? What the hell was happening? I've been asking myself the same question for a long time now.
立てるか?
No. Sarika slowly offered me her hand. Her voice was different, but it was the same Sarika. I went to grab her hand and stand up like I always did. And then I smacked it away without thinking. No, that's not what I want to do. My head was still a mess from everything that had happened, but I could feel my temperature rising. I thought once more of my sister's death, and my rage was just barely enough to support me. I stood up and glared at Sarika. The urge to vomit had left me at some point. Sarika had held the hand I knocked away close. She looked back at me. Why are you looking like that? Like you're hurt.
他に取る手段がなかった。クルス・ノノには正体を感づかれてしまったから。
何？
私は私のままでお前を生存させ続けなければいけなかった。そのためには彼女が邪魔だった。
What? Without warning, her body floated and slammed into a nearby wall. There wasn't even time to think about it. I used my power without even realizing I'd done so.
ふざけんなよ。お前とノノは。
友人ではない。私には友人など一人もいない。
She knew what I was thinking.
それが私の能力だ。私はこの能力でお前を守り続けてきた。お前に生み出されてからずっとだ。
Keep me safe? You liar.
嘘ではない。
だから嘘はやめろ。
What? Why are you
相
smiling?
変わらずだ。自分にとって望まない情報が出てくると、まず逃避から入るんだな。幼い頃から変わっていない。
Stop it.
私を生み出した時もそうだった。
Stop it.
私はお前に生み出された存在。そしてお前を生き延びさせること。それ以外は私にとって二の次なんだ。
おい、くだらない思い出話なら死んでからやれ。
There was a low, fierce voice. It came from Kunasato. We went over to Sarika and grabbed her by the neck, then slammed her into the wall.
文句はないよな。
I could hear a horrible creaking sound coming from Sarika's neck. Maybe she couldn't breathe because her mouth looked like it was gasping for air.
お前たち委員会のその理屈じゃ、二の次のやつには何をしても構わないんだろう。
やめなさい、ミオちゃん。
黙れ。私はこいつを。
らしくないな。思考がめちゃくちゃだ。まるで頭の中が沸騰しているようだぞ。
何？
私は委員会に協力していたが、属してはいない。お前のアメリカ時代の件とは無関係だ。
勝手に私の心を読むな。
Kunisato's hands dug deeper into Sarika's throat.
何を言っている？お前が考えるから私に伝わってしまうんだ。まあ、考えるなと言っても無理か。白熊効果を直に感じたのは初めてだな。
Let's see what that is. A strange phenomenon observed in human thought. People who are told to suppress certain thoughts or not remember certain things actually think and remember more strongly than those people who are not subject to such suppression. The name White Bear effect comes from an actual experiment where subjects were shown a photograph of a white bear and told not to think of it. Huh. There we go.
お前、別にバカにしているわけじゃない。手を離してくれないか。目的は話をすることだと言っただろう。ああ、望むなら委員会の情報も知っているだけ話してやる。有村がいれば本当のことかどうかわかるだろう。
Sarika glanced at Arimura. Arimura took a frightening step back and then looked at the two of them. Kunosato let go violently. Her hands were shaking, and there were red marks in Serika's throat. Kunosato took a long breath to calm herself
今
down.
回の事件を含めてこちらが聞いたことに関して全て話せ。自分で言った通り有村がいる以上嘘をついても無駄だ。
ああ、
それから今のように私の思考を読んで会話をするな。頭の中が能力者に覗かれていると思うと吐き気がする。
わかった。それで構わないか。
Serika suddenly looked at me. I couldn't speak. Why was she asking me?
知りたいんだろ、真実を。お前は新聞部の部室でいろいろな仮説を立てては事件の全容を追っていた。確かにいいところまで言っていたが、最後に間違えた。佐久間や組織の存在に気づくことができなかった。
I made a mistake? That's right. I screwed up at the very end.
私がすべて知っている。お前がずっと追ってきた事件のすべてを。
Her words made me angry. It was as if she was trying to tell me everything as a favor.
バカにするなよ。僕はもう事件のことなんて。
何？
Serika seemed surprised. What difference did it make now? Cheap viewers on blank. Hello, how's it going? Yui and Nono were gone because I tried to solve the case. They weren't coming back. And
復讐なんて絶対に考えないで。危険なことはしないで。何もかも忘れて、他の人と同じ日常を、だけど埋もれないように、強く、しっかりと過ごしていってください。
もう危険なことはしない。
クルス・ノノのせいか。
damn it, she was reading my thoughts again.
心配しなくても、私がお前を危険な目に遭わせない。むしろ、お前が危ないことをしないでくれると助かる。だが、委員会と事件のことに関しては、お前も聞いておけ。今後、身を守るために必要となる。あと、
やめろ。
I screamed. I couldn't take any more. Stop it, Serika! Stop talking like you're on my side. You were the one who killed Yui and Kurisu. And you were the one who did that to Ito.
理屈より感情を優先するのか。それが情報強者の取るべき態度か。
うるさい。
I know that. But what if I can't help it? I can't just calm down and listen to you.
今だけ割り切るんだ。どうせもうじき決着がつく。そしてどう転ぼうと私はお前の前に二度と姿を現さない。
何？
だから今は割り切ってくれ。長くて24時間ほどの協力体制だ。それに黒里美代。
Serika pointed to the girl who'd been who had been strangling her only a few moments
取引だ。
ago.
お前の望みを叶えてやる。その代わり、今後宮代拓郎を預かってもらいたい。
なんだと。
順を追って話す。その途中でお前の聞きたいことを聞いていい。だがその前に座っていいか。壁に叩きつけられた時に腹の傷が開いた。
Sarika went to the sofa and sat on the edge. Only then did I remember what Dad had just said. That he'd cut open Sarika's stomach. When she sat down, she put a hand on her stomach for a second. And I saw that it was stained with blood. But that was eerie. But what was eerie was her attitude. She'd been careful not to put pressure on it when she sat down. But she didn't look hurt. It was as if injuries like that were an everyday occurrence for her, and she'd given up on ever getting better. The Sarika I'd always known seemed like a different person.
佐久間にやられたということは、あいつもディソードを持っているのか。
質問は佐久間のことからでいいのか。
Sarika didn't even bother wiping the blood off her fingers.
いや。おい、有村。こっちに来い。
なんですか？
お前も座れ。長くなる。こいつが嘘を言ったらすぐに教えろ。
Kunasato didn't wait for Arimura's answer. She turned back and sat down across from Sarika. Arimura still looked scared of her, but...
はい。私も聞きたいことありますから。
She sat down next to Kunasato. I didn't want to go near her. Images of Yui and Nona's deaths flashed in my mind, and I couldn't think straight. There was no telling what I might do if I got close. I ended up leaning up against a wall.
百瀬さん、新庄さんにも聞かせたい話です。電話をしてスピーカーでつないでおいてもらえますか。
わかったわ。
それからさっきはすみませんでした。
何が
Kunasato nodded to Momose, and then her expression tightened once more. Momose made a call and said a few words to someone on the other end, probably Shinjo. Then a moment later, she nodded. Then Kunasato began.
まず根本的なことからだ。委員会の目的は何だ？
わからない。
は？
わかるといえば嘘になってしまう。そもそも私は佐久間と協力関係にあっただけだ。お前が盛んに委員会と呼ぶ組織のことは知らされていないんだ。佐久間自身だって委員会の末端組織でギガロマニアックスの研究をしていただけの人間だ。委員会全体のことは伺い知れない。
末端の組織というのは
6年前、サードメルト、渋谷地震を起こした連中が属していた研究グループだ。AH 東京総合病院の地下の研究所を管理していた。
I shook a little when I heard her say that. That was where Senri Minamisawa had been tortured. that was where Uki had been kept and forced to take care of the patients. Dad had been working for them?
今渋谷地震を起こしたと言ったな。じゃあやっぱりあれは人為的なものだったのか。
人為的というよりも何らかのトラブルと聞いている。詳細は極秘で佐久間も知らされていないらしい。
Let me think. Did we know in Chaos Head? I don't remember. About, like, the earthquake. No, we didn't know.
どう
I
や
don't.
ら私の仮説は正しかったようだな。
What she said matched most of Kunisato's theory.
渋谷地震が実験中のトラブルだとすると、委員会はそのせいで研究そのものを放棄したのか。
少なくとも佐久間はそう言っている。6年前、事故のせいで委員会は手を引き、地下の研究所も解体させられたと。しかも委員会はギガロマニアックスとは違う案件に力を注ぐようになったそうだ。佐久間は自分たちが切り捨てられたと怒っていたが、詳しくはわからない。
ギガロマニアックス実験の被験者たちが地下で放置されていたのもそのせいか。
そうだ。はしごを外された形の研究者たちは山添雨季をはじめとする被験者たちを持て余し、ああやって軟禁しておくしかなかった。だがしばらく経ってイレギュラーが発生した。
Serika glanced over at me.
白い光による能力者のことか。
ああ。
私はその光を事故によって飛び散ったギガロマニアックスの発生因子だと推測したが、その通りか。
そう考えていいと思う。佐久間も仲間の研究者たちとそういう話をしていたからな。
仲間がいるのか。
いや、元の仲間と言った方がいいな。佐久間以外は研究を諦めて一応肩着でやっている。前に宮代や有村が脳の検査をしに行ったクリニックの院長とかな。
何？じゃああのクリニックで撮った宮代たちの脳の断層写真は
フェイクだ。昔のよしみで作らせたらしい。
Serika kept talking. What she said should have been a shock to me, but so much had happened that it felt like I was no longer capable of being surprised. He was really part of this committee thing? Dad, the guy who always drank too much. Dad, the lazy guy who got chewed out by Nono and Yui all the time, but whom everyone at Aoba Dorm relied on more than anything. Dad, the man who loved way more people than he'd actually given. Who'd actually give it. Oh, okay, the man I loved way more than the people who'd actually given birth to me. Was all fake. When he'd been the head of Alba Clinic, when he'd been the dad at Alba Dorm, it was all fake? And then he'd killed Yui and Nono, who trusted him completely? I could feel pain in my hand when I punched the wall, but it didn't help me forget any of the other things I was feeling.
佐久間の目的は何だ？
言っただろう。イレギュラーで発生した能力者の始末だ。
違う。本当の目的だ。
うん。
能力者の始末が目的ならもっと簡単に殺せたはずだ。なのになぜこんな面倒なことをした？
Yeah, why do such elaborate murders too for it?
11番目のロールシャッハ画像を現場に残したり、6年前と同じ日付に事件を引き起こしたり。
That's right. That's how all this began. The mystery was so compelling that I'd started to work on it with the rest of the newspaper club. And in the end, I decided that it was a game. The killer was challenging me to, and I was wrong.
あれは委員会へのメッセージだよ。
メッセージ
？6年前、トラブルによって発生した危険なイレギュラー。つまり、想定外のギガロマニアックスを自分が掃除してやっているというアピールとでも言おうか。
掃除？
Arimura raised an eyebrow. It felt so furious that I took everything I had. I felt so furious that it took everything I had to stop me from using my powers.
ふざけんな。ユイをあんな風に殺したのは掃除だったっていうのか。
Yeah, that doesn't look very clean. Momose must have seen me because she came over and whispered for me to calm down. I just barely managed.
想定外のギガロマニアックスというと、大谷や高柳、柿田、渡部、あるいはこいつらのことだな。
Kunisata pointed at Arimura and I. Sarika nodded silently.
そうだ。佐久間は末端の組織の人間で、委員会と直接コンタクトする手段がない。だから、委員会が注目するような形で事件を起こしていったんだ。さらに、11番目のロールシャッハ画像、つまり、本物の力士シールも、委員会にとって見過ごせないファクターだと佐久間は考えた。あれは6年前の計画破棄とともにデータごと全て消去された。当然1枚たりとも残っていてはいけないものだ。ところがそんなトップシークレットがよりにもよって事件に使われニュースで公開されたら委員会だって放置はできないだろう。必ず佐久間に接触してくる。それが狙いだった。
データごと消去されたのなら、佐久間はどうやってあの画像を手に入れたんだ？
ある場所に画像が保存されていたんだ。委員会の想像もつかないような場所にな。それを取り出すことに佐久間は成功した。
というと？
脳の中だよ。地下で実験を受けていた被験者の山添右紀が連れていた老人を覚えているか？
I remembered too. The blind old woman.
あの老人だけでは何の役にも立たない。でも非常に珍しい能力を持ったギガロマニアックス山添右紀との組み合わせを発見したとき、佐久間は狂気していたよ。
山添の能力は他人の妄想をリアルブートしてしまう。それを使ったんだな。
そうだ。あの画像に取り憑かれていた老人は食事を求めるように画像を求め、それを山添がリアルブートするようになった。
Wait, but what was it?
そして11番目のロールシャッハ画像は 渋谷の至る所に出現し、佐久間はそれを回収して犯行に使った。ここまでやれば委員会が動かないはずがない。
佐久間は委員会と接触することで何を望んだんだ？
自分が中心となったギガロマニアックス研究の再開。
That was all? That was the only reason? That was the only reason he'd done all of this?
で、実際にあったのか？委員会からの接触は。
そのようだ。委員会は研究再開の条件として今回の事件の収拾をつけるよう佐久間に命じた。そこで奴は私との約束を反故にし、宮代に全ての罪をかぶせて事件の収束を図ろうとしている。
For the first time, there was a hint of disgust in her voice.
結局佐久間に裏切られたわけか。なぜ佐久間はこいつを犯人に仕立て上げようとしている？
Kunisata pointed at me as she spoke.
本来であれば事件は南沢千里が犯人となって決着するはずだったんだ。自殺という形でな。
I was caught off guard by the sudden mention of her name.
と言っても実際はお前たちも知っての通り灰田理子という別人だが。宮代拓、お前はずっと南沢千里が生きていて自分に復讐しようとしているのではないかと怯えていたが、それは杞憂だ。本当の南沢千里はこの世にはいない。確かに死んだんだ。そもそもあいつはお前を恨んでなどいなかったしな。
お前、南沢千里のこと知ってたのか？
直接は知らないが、クルスノノの思考を読んだ。
また思考盗撮か。大した芸だ。
皮肉はいい。とにかく佐久間は全ての事件の後、灰田理子を南沢千里ということにして自殺させ、事件の幕引きにするつもりだった。だがその計画はうまくいかなかった。さすが宮代拓だと褒めておくが、お前たちはこちらが思っているよりもずっと早く事件の裏に気づき、すぐに行動を起こした。そのせいで殺す予定だった能力者が殺せなくなり、順番が狂ったんだ。
Sarika looked at me for just a moment, then looked away. She was probably talking about Uki. They were going to kill a little girl like that? I scowled at Sarika as hard as I could.
それで仕方なく灰田陸を先に殺したのか？
そうだ。ニュージェネの狂気の再来事件を途切れさせるわけにはいかなかったからな。
I felt so disgusted that I watched Sarika talk coolly about about a murder. This couldn't be the Sarika I knew.
それで最終的に宮代拓を犯人に仕立て上げようとしている理由は何だ？
実はよくわからないが、委員会の指示かもしれない。
I'd never even heard of this committee until now. So, why?
覚えていないか？宮代自身が以前疑問に思っていたことだぞ。
何のことだよ。
能力者は一人で一つの能力しか持てないのかという疑問があったろう。
That's right. He had come up when we were talking in the club room. In the end, we'd never come up with an answer, so we had to move on.
お前は私という存在をリアルブートした。これだけでも大した能力だが、その後さらに別の能力まで使えるようになっている。渋谷地震で発生した白い光、それを浴びたものの中にはこんな例は存在しない。そうだな、久里。
ああ。今のところデータ上は皆無だ。
だが佐久間によれば、かつて佐久間たちの組織が研究していたギガロマニアックスというのはそういうものだったそうだ。
何？
サイコキネシスだのテレパスだの、特定の力だけを持つ超能力者まがいではなく、心の中に思い描いたどんな妄想でもリアルブートできる存在、それをギガロマニアックスと呼んだ。つまり本来のギガロマニアックスは能力さえ開花すればどんな力でも使えるはずなんだよ。
Kunasato looked at me with narrowed eyes.
つまり宮代拓は本物ということだな。そして委員会は何らかの理由で本物を危険だと考え排除したがっている。
推論だがな、6年前の事故に何か関係があるのかもしれない。私が話せることはこれで全てだ。あとは知らされていない。
どうだ、有村。
嘘はついてないみたいですね。
Arimura had been watching Serika with fiery eyes the whole time. Serika looked back at her, and after a moment's thought, she spoke.
ああ、その通りだ、有村。
Oh, I got the hiccups. I'm gonna get some water. Arimura leapt up out of her seat.
だから勝手に人の心を読むな。
さっきから考えていることがあるだろう。言葉に出さないと他の連中に伝わらないぞ。
最低。
There was hatred in her voice. When Serika didn't respond, it only angered her more.
セリじゃない、尾上セリか。あんたは思考盗撮を使って能力者を見つけ殺していた。そうよね。
ああ。
ラブホテルで柿田さんが殺された事件、どうして柿田さんの方を殺したの？私も能力者だって分かってたんでしょ？二人であそこにいたんだから。
簡単だ。私の能力と柿田の能力が同じだったからだよ。思考盗撮の能力者は邪魔だ。私や佐久間の正体がバレる。
たったそれだけの理由で？
私たちの計画には重要なことだ。
ちきしょう！あんたのせいで！
At some point, Arimura had started to cry.
そうだ。私がいたせいで、あの日、柿田は死んだ。
Arimura reached out into thin air, went to grab her D-sword, and then stopped. She looked down at Serika, tears running down her cheeks that were red with rage. Arimura slammed herself back into her seat instead of grabbing her sword. She held her arms tight to her body without bothering to wipe away the tears.
新庄さん、聞いていたか？
After a moment's silence, Kunosato spoke into the phone.
あ
あんたにやってもらいたいことがあるんだがな。
あ、なんだ。
青葉寮にまだ捜査員が残ってるなら、何とかしてほしい。あとマスコミも。
ああ。家宅捜索自体はもう終わってる。可能だと思うが、どうする気だ？
場所をそっちへ移す。佐久間の調査と、あと、山添浮きを私たちの目の届くところに置いておきたい。
It was several hours later when Shinjo called us and told us that all the police had left Aoba dorm. We all loaded into Momose's car, and Shinjo told us which routes to follow to get there without hitting any checkpoints.
Hmm? 百瀬さんは？
フリージアに戻りました。別の線からいろいろ調べてくれるとか。
そうか。
Shinjo was waiting for us in the living room. He stood somewhere he could observe Serika. I suddenly felt a familiar smell. Felt the familiar smells of home, and felt just a little better.
ここはやっぱり僕の家だ。
It had only been a little while since I'd left to find Kurisu, but it felt like a long
こ
time
こに来る
ago.
まで大丈夫だったか？
はい。
I nodded. I nodded back, but it had felt like the whole town was going crazy. As I crouched in the back seat, I could see I would sometimes look up and peek out the window. It was bizarre how many people were there. The sun was only just starting to rise, but there were groups of people partying everywhere. Through closed windows, I could hear irritating laughter.
みんなが浮かれてる。うちの署は全員街のあちこちで警戒に当たってる。
Shinjo must have seen the look on my
僕を
face.
探してるんでしょうか？
いや、そうでは。
He was about to shake his head, but
すまん。正直その可能性が高い。復興祭でいつもより人が多いのは事実だが、ネットは見たか？
あ、いえ。
I hadn't felt like it.
君を捕まえた者に懸賞金が出るというデマが広がっている。
え？
That can't be a reward?
もちろん、警察はそんな発表はしていない。逆にデマだと発表したんだが、それが分かっていないのか、仲間と一緒に君を探している連中も多いらしい。
デマだなんてみんなわかっているさ。
何？
Shinjo looked at Serika with animosity in his
ネ
eyes.
ット上の祭りというのはこういうものだ。連中にとっては情報が正しかろうと間違っていようと、そんなことはどうでもいい。そうだろ、宮代拓。
Yeah. For some reason, she seemed a little happy. She was right. That was the basic mechanism for internet festivals.
有村、久野里さんと和樹たちは？
I wanted to change the subject, so I asked about the people who weren't here.
久野里さんは一回佐久間が仕事で使っていた PC の中をダメ元で漁ってます。花たちは
Armora glanced at Serika before she spoke.
ゆうとくんも一緒に雨季の部屋にいてもらってます。近くにいない方がいいと思ったから。
Armora didn't come out and say it, but I knew that she meant close to Serika.
雨季は大丈夫かな。
ええ、ゆうとくんのおかげと言っちゃなんですけど、自分がしっかりしなきゃって思ってるみたいです。そういう時の女の子は強いですよ。覚えておくといいです。
そっか。
Yui and Kurusu had been the same way. Whenever they had someone to protect it, they were stronger than anything.
あとは父さん、佐久間がおかしなことをしてこなければいいけど。
それは心配しなくていい。佐久間は私と宮代のことにケリがつくまで有村や山添には手を出さない。
ねえ、あんたさ。
There was a challenge in Arimura's
まる
voice.
で仲間みたいな顔して言うのやめて。めちゃくちゃ腹立つから。
She was clutching her hands into a fist so tightly that they'd turned white. Her lips were shaking a little. All traces of an expression vanished from Serika's face. It was impossible to see what she was feeling. And then, the intercom rang. I looked and saw it was from the exam room on the first floor. It was probably Kunosato. I hit the answer button and put it on speaker.
宮代か。
はい。
佐久間が普段使っていた PC は診察室のもの以外にあるか？
いえ、ないと思います。
As far as I knew, anyway. Dad, though, I didn't want to call him that now. I'd hid everything from me.
おい、尾上。ここの他に佐久間が隠れていそうな場所は思い当たらないんだな。
ああ。
Serika answered Kunisato's question. During the hours while we'd waited for the police to leave Aoba dorm, Kunisato had prepared Serika with questions. Most of the questions dealt with the nature of the committee, rather than the case itself. I heard a lot of words I'd never heard before, and I don't think anybody but the two of them understood most of it. What struck me the most during that time was the range on Kunisato's face. Her face was twisted into something terrible, and she would sometimes slam her fist down on the desk as if she was trying to stop herself from strangling Onaway. She must have really, really hated the committee. It seemed like it had something to do with what had happened to her when she was but I couldn't ask her anything. I could hear her working at the committee working at the computer. I could hear her working at the computer over the speakerphone.
ダメだな。何も出ない。おい、尾上。
なんだ。
お前が私に与えられる情報はこれで全てか？
Yes, Serika
な
nodded.
ら、宮代を私に預けるというのはどういうことだ？
That's right. I hadn't gotten the chance to ask that. Serika had said that at Frieza.
言葉通りだ、久野里美代。お前には今後、宮代拓郎を可能な限り生かし続けてもらいたい。
はあ？
私はこれから佐久間の指定した場所へ行く。もちろん、一人でだ。
Serika looked at me as she spoke.
あいつはお前を連れてこいと言っていたが、それに従う必要はない。私は必ずあいつと差し違える。だからお前は久野里美代の手引きでこの町から逃げるんだ。あいつが死んで真実が明らかになれば、いずれお前の無実も証明されるだろ
なんで？
う。お前はもう危ないことはしないんだろう。
No, that's not
なん
right.
でお前がそんなことするんだよ。
私の存在する理由がお前を生かすことだからだ。
私がそいつを引き受けるとでも思ってるのか？
Kunosato's voice was cold, as if she thought the whole thing was a bad
受
joke.
けてはくれないか。
当たり前だ。私は委員会に復讐するためにここにいる。ギガロマニアックスのお守りをするためじゃない。
宮代拓郎を渋谷の外に連れ出せば、お前の望みが叶うかもしれないぞ。
Kunosato fell silent, as if she was thinking of something. What? What was going on? What would happen if she took me out to Shibuya?
いいか、久野里美代。佐久間は委員会の中枢へ入り込んでいきたいらしいが、そんなのはただの夢物語だ。委員会にそんなつもりはないだろう。結局、佐久間をどうしようと、お前の望む中枢にはたどり着けない。だが、お前が宮代拓郎を連れて逃げれば話は別だ。
カオスチャイルド症候群か。
I frowned when I saw Serika nod. Chaos Child Syndrome. That was the name for the PTSD symptoms that started appearing in children after the Shibuya earthquake. What did that have to do with anything?
それができるのはお前しかいない。委員会に対して知識を持ち、碧峰学園や青葉寮の特殊性に気づいていて、なぜ能力者が渋谷に集まっているのか、それを理解しているお前にしかな。どうだ、お前が復讐を望んでいる連中が向こうから現れるかもしれないぞ。
I didn't know what she meant. I could tell that Arimura was confused too. Aoba Dorm and Hekio Academy were special? And what was this all about, the psychics being in Shibuya?
それは能力が生まれるきっかけになったあの白い光が渋谷で起こったからで。
No. Wait. That's not right. The light was created... the light was what created the... physics. That's what I'd learned from all the information so far. But...
能力者たちが渋谷にとどまり続けている理由はない？
待ってください。どういうことですか？
Arimura shouted toward the phone.
能力者は私たちみたいな人間はどうして渋谷ばかりに？
There was no answer. But I knew Kunosato heard her. Serika stared at the phone as if waiting for an answer. there was some connection between the psychics and KS child syndrome.
本当にそう考えているのか。
何？
宮代を渋谷から逃がすことが宮代の生存につながると。
佐久間を殺したところであいつに思考誘導をかけられた人間は正気に戻らない。宮代拓の居場所は渋谷にはもうない。であれば逃がすしかないだろう。
有村、そいつは嘘を言ってないか。
言ってないはずです。それより何なんですか？何を知ってるんですか
？There was another silence. This time it was long enough that I thought she'd hung up.
それなら有村と山添も渋谷から話した方が委員会と接触する可能性は高まるな。
好きにすればいい。宮代拓郎を連れて行ってくれるなら文句はない。
は？ちょっと。
宮代と有村は荷物をまとめろ。山添にもそう伝えておけ。新庄さんにも手伝ってもらうぞ。
Suddenly she hung up.
どういうことだ？
こっちが聞きたいですよ。ちょっと行ってきます。
Armura sounded irritated as she ran down the stairs to go see Kunasato. I thought to myself as I watched her go, was there still something I didn't know about the case?
知りたいか？
Sariko was looking at me, as if she was trying to test me. Again, she was reading my mind.
僕は
危険なことはしないで。
別に勝手にすればいいじゃないか。
I turned away before feeling my mind turned into words. That's right. Anything else would mean betraying Nono. I glanced to the side and saw that Sariko was still staring at me. Her expression was the same as ever. But she seemed the same as when I'd knocked her hand away at Frieza, sad as if she dropped and broken some priceless treasure. November 6th, 2015, Friday.
では最後に神聖の町渋谷のますますの発展を願い開催の言葉とさせていただきます。皆様ご協力のほどよろしくお願いいたします。
November 6th, 2015, 9 a.m. The second Shibuya Peace and Restoration Festival had begun. The people gathered in front of the I'm sorry. Hikariwo began to loudly applaud when the major finished. The mayor! Oh my god! When the mayor finished his speech! There we go! Then they started to split off to visit the concert. The concerts and stalls that they wanted to go see. Over 80% of the people were from outside Shibuya. Many were from Tokyo, but others had to come all the way from outside the country to witness the celebration. There were more than 1,000 people in attendance. The first festival was held last year to celebrate the 5th anniversary of the reconstruction, and the whole ward had come to celebrate. A similar event had been done a year after the disaster, but had been less of a festival, more of a memorial. The rebuilding work was proceeding at a feverish pitch, but at that point it was still too early to call it a city reborn. But last year, even though there were still areas that were covered in rubble, the 5th year anniversary and the prospect of the tax revenue that would come along with it were enough to get the government to hold a festival for the whole ward. Despite being only a one-day event, it had attracted over 80,000 people and worldwide attendance. It was such a big success that for this year, the city had put even more effort into it. The concerts were bigger and there were more places to eat and drink. The main areas were centered around the Hikariwo building, as well as the Shibuya Cultural Hall, Shibuya 107, and Shibuya Sign City. All the main roads around the station were close to any traffic that wasn't bringing in people or equipment to the festival. Bun Kamura Street and Dogenzaka Street in particular were overflowing with performers and stalls. The reporter with the Tokyo Next TV saw the camera nod, and then she looked at the scene in front of her. This whole thing was stupid, and she could tell she was getting tired. Center Street, one of Shibuya's busiest shopping centers. The street had a lot of young people to begin with, and now, with the festival, it was covered with stalls to visit, and filled with people of all ages. When she'd been given the job of reporting on Shibuya Reconstruction Festival several months ago, she'd literally jumped for joy. The reason she was so excited was that the vocalist for one of her favorite bands, Momone Takiyanagi was going to be performing on stage. Ever since she'd happened to hear Takiyangi's... no, I didn't do that right. Hold on. Takiyanagi?'s voice at a concert hall, she'd been a fan, or perhaps a dedicated believer. She was willing to do whatever it took to get a camera to her performance at the Restoration Festival so that the whole world could see how wonderful she was. But she'd been caught up in the return of the new generation madness and murdered. Now there was barely any point in covering the Restoration Festival anymore. But she still had to smile and obey when her boss told her to come here, and in the end, she'd wanted to believe that a big TV station would be better than this. What was she doing? what was she doing was little better than rubbernecking.
ああ、いたいた。ほら。
The cameraman pointed to a group of people wearing homemade t-shirts. The shirts had a white print background with a photo on the front and a big red that covered the photo. A big red? Oh, question mark. Okay, there we go. They were all young, just like the others she'd interviewed so far. Oh, I see a sumo sticker up there. She covered her annoyance with the same smile she used to deal with her obnoxious boss. Then she pushed through the crowd and got close to the group.
こんにちは。何してるんですか？
うわ、テレビ？どこっすか？
Who cares? She thought to herself. But she told them she was with Tokyo Next.
これっすよ、これ。
He pulled on his t-shirt to show her. The photo in the center was of two fat males' faces, the sumo sticker.
テレビ来てるってことはやっぱマジなんすか？スイポの情報。
何ですかそれ？
She played dumb and acted surprised. She certainly couldn't tell them that she'd come here because of a rumor on Twitter. Especially one that was almost certainly a lie.
宮代がここで自殺するって噂が流れてんすよ。
She knew about it. Before dawn, it was supposed to happen in front of the big TVs. And a few hours ago, it was next to a statue of Hachi in front of the station.
宮代ってあの指名手配になっている宮代拓くんですか？
あ、画像ありますよ。
He started to fiddle with his smartphone, seemingly oblivious to the fact that she hadn't asked to see it. It was the same picture of Takeru Mayashido that she was already sick of seeing, according to her boss. It was from his student notebook.
こんなものどうして持ってるんですか？
ネット見てないんすか？みんな持ってますよ。
俺らマジで懸賞金狙ってますから。
What's the reward? A reward? Come to think of it, there was a fake rumor about about that going
そ
around.
の T シャツはご自分で作られたんですか？
まさか、さっき300円で買ったんすよ。超絶ダサいっしょ。ネタネタ。
And then they all started to laugh, though she didn't get the joke. She could feel herself getting more aggressive. She'd seen similar t-shirts and play cards, and even some that were declaring Takeru Mayashido as a god and glorifying the sumo stickers. Some of them were being sold as part of a movement to get rid of the sumo stickers, so people could focus on the festival, but most people were just wearing them to be a part of the chaos. Of course, this was the first time she'd seen anyone who'd actually believed in the
宮
reward.
代拓くんについてどう思いますか？
調子こいてますね。連続殺人？しかも同じ施設のやつもでしょ？何やってもいいと思ってんすよ、こいつ。
こいつのこと神とか言ってるオタク連中マジキモくないっすか？俺らそういうの許せないんすよ。
She ignored most of what they were saying. There was no need to go any deeper as long as she had footage on her camera that would be good enough. But everyone seemed to think that Takeru Mayashido was the killer. At least everyone who'd come to the festival to find him seemed to think so. And they were probably right. The official announcement just said that he was wanted as a person of interest, but if he wasn't a killer, they wouldn't have used his real name. And she'd also heard that they were in fact looking for him as a suspect, though she didn't know where the information had come from. She suddenly felt a rage building inside her. There's no way she could do what she'd originally set out to do now. The angle or angel? The angle with the heavenly, oh yeah, the angel with the heavenly voice was dead. But if there was one reason to participate in this festival, if he wanted to kill himself in public, he was probably some kind of sick madman. If he pulled it off, even more idiots might start worshipping him, and that was probably just what he wanted. She wouldn't let that happen. That wouldn't atone for her murder at all. He deserved a miserable, painful death, preferably with people throwing rocks at him like an old historical drama. Only then did she realize that the people in front of her had stopped talking. She said thank you and went to go find another person to interview. She suddenly stopped and asked the group one last question she thought of before they disappeared into the crowd. Then they laughed again, but she still didn't get the joke. This time she turned around without thanking them and walked off into the busy street. She could tell her cameraman looked confused. He didn't seem to understand the meaning of her question. If they were from Saitama, that meant they weren't from Shibuya. And from the look of it, they weren't victims of the disaster. The people who had nothing to do with the Shibuya earthquake were looking for Mayashiro? So, the victims of the earthquake she just interviewed a while ago, who were hoping that the Restoration Festival would be a success. So, were people with a grudge to bear against him like her? Her thoughts were never going to be heard on TV, and the people nearby couldn't hear them either. But they were shared by the vast majority of the people at the Restoration Festival. Whenever she saw someone wearing a sumo sticker on their clothes, she figured they were after Mayashiro, and when she went to interview them, she found she was right. But in fact, the news that Mayashiro was going to kill himself in front of the crowd had been playing on TV every hour since last night. And because of that, over 98% of the people at the Restoration Festival heard it. There was literally no place safe for him in the city.
調子こいてますね。連続殺人？しかも同じ施設のやつもでしょ？何やってもいいと思ってんすよ、こいつ。
The words made me sick, so I turned off the TV. I realized that the skin on the soles of my feet was starting to rub off, and unclenched my toes. It felt like if I didn't keep some part of my body tensed up, I'd scream and start smashing things. I'd always hated outsiders who never cared for the actual people caught up in something. But this time, it was different.
誰が調子ついてるって。
Damn it. You don't know anything. You don't understand anything. And if you don't know anything, then you don't need to keep your mouth shut. I wasn't the one who killed Nono Yui. Sarika had been sitting in her chair, barely moving. She seemed to be staring at a spot on the wall, just waiting for some time to pass.
タクルさん。
おい、ここへ来ちゃダメだろ。
I suddenly shut my mouth. Uki and Kazuki were both looking at Sarika. Their hands were shaking, either with fear or suppressed rage, or maybe both.
新庄さんと優斗は。
新庄さんは今電話を。優斗くんはお薬を飲んで私の部屋で眠ってます。
そっか。
I was glad he was asleep. If he saw the person who killed his sister, he probably couldn't take it. He was still just in elementary school. The two of them stared at Sarika, unmoving. Sarika didn't move either. But
本当だ。
at some point, Sarika had turned away from the wall to look at them.
クルス・ノノを殺したのは私だよ。山添雨季、和樹花。
Their expressions changed. Sarika must have read their thoughts. They took a few steps back and shivered.
他のすべての事件もあなたなんですか？
そうだ。
どうして？いえ、だったら。
Sarika's voice was calm, but Uki's was small and shaking.
私がいた場所のこと何か知ってるんですよね。私がお世話をしていた皆さんは今どこに？
さあな、私にはわからない。
答えてください。お願いです。あなたがすべての犯人なら知っているはずです。
I suddenly realized why Uki wouldn't back down.
そうだ。
Uki didn't know about Dad yet. I hadn't had time to tell her, and
ウキは父さんを慕っていたから。
Uki was extremely shy, and it was Nono and Dad who'd given her a place here. And she always found her meaning in life in helping others, so doctors must have been people she really looked up to.
話せるわけないだろう。
山添雨季、お前は何も聞いていないようだな。
やめろ。
I jumped out of my chair.
お前なら佐久間の正体に気づける可能性があったんだがな。おそらく6年前に会っているはずだ。
何の話を？
まあ、あんな状況では無理かもしれないが、佐久間は。
だからやめろ！
Whoa! Oh, oops. I screamed. I hit her with my power without even thinking about it. I slammed her off the chair and onto the floor. Then I walked over and grabbed her by the hair. I'd never been this violent with a girl before. I could hear Uki and Kazuki gasping at the change in me.
こっちを見ろ。
I grabbed her by the hair to make her look straight in my eye.
いい加減にしろよお前。これ以上 大切な家族の心を壊すな。
I looked at her, mustering all the rage I could in my mind. She should be able to tell how mad I was. Sarika must have felt my anger, or maybe it hurt when I grabbed her hair, because her face twisted a little in pain. I looked back and saw Uki staring at Sarika with wide eyes. Kazuki looked sad too.
もうやめてください。いくら尾上さんがその悪い人でも、タクルさんがそんな怖いことするの見たくないです。
ああ、そうだな。
I let go of Sarika's hair. She ran her hand through it violently to try and get it back into place.
タクルさん、先生はどうしたんですか？今どこにいるんですか？それに新庄さんが突然荷物をまとめろって、それと何か関係あるんですか？
それは。
There were tears in Uki's eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth. Sarika stood up, and then she grabbed her stomach again for some reason. Oh, maybe because she has a wound there? I don't know. There was blood on her hands. Come to think of it, her wound looked like it had opened when I used my powers on her at Frieza. Damn it! I turned to Uki, who looked like she was on the verge of breaking down in tears.
後で必ず話すから、今は言われた通りに荷物をまとめてくれ、ウキ。
でも、
Uki looked like she wanted to ask more questions, but Kazuki grabbed her and grabbed her hand firmly and shook her head. And then she pushed her gently on the shoulder and led her out of the room. I said thanks in my mind for Kazuki's kindness. And as soon as I heard the two of them start to quietly pack up Uki's room, I invited Sarika downstairs.
いいから来いって。あれ？
When I went inside the exam room, I didn't see Kunosato or Arimura.
変だな。
I thought they'd still be here.
外科用の設備などここにはないだろう。
Sarika must have already read my
一
mind.
般家庭の救急箱より増したろ。それに。
And Nono had said that Dad used to be a brain surgeon, and that he'd done operations on patients during the Shibuya earthquake, and that there were still patients who said that he'd saved their lives.
そうだ。父さんは。
Dad was a good doctor. The people in the neighborhood loved him. He drank too much, and he could be a little lazy, but he was a man who found his life's work in helping others. He was a man I could respect. So why? At first I hadn't believed he could betray us. But as time passed, it started to seem more real. I knew it was pathetic, but I almost started to cry. I tried to take my mind off things by going through the shelves, which were filled with gauze and drugs. But all the medicine bottles had neat labels in Nono's handwriting, and when I saw them, it only made me want to cry more.
違うな。佐久間は相手の思考を誘導するという最悪な力を手に入れ、それを楽しんでいる人間だ。 なのに表向きはいい医者を演じていた。
Sterika lifted up her skirt and showed me her stomach. Oh, her shirt.
お前、それ。
It was covered in packing tape that had been stained dark red. It was a wound poorly and far too tight.
佐久間は以前、私が傷の応急処置にガムテープを使っているのを見て笑っていたよ。やるじゃねえか、と意味のわからないことを言ってな。お前は2番目の事件を覚えているか？ストリートミュージシャンの高柳が殺された事件だ。
ああ。
腹が裂かれてスピーカーが埋め込まれていた。あの時、思考誘導された高柳が止血に使ったのがやはりガムテープだ。思考誘導された高柳が裂いた腹をガムテープで処置しているのを見た。なぜそんなことをさせているのか、あいつに尋ねたが、あいつはこう言った。
お前に似てるだろ？人形みたいで面白いじゃねえか。
I could imagine his tone and his voice. I felt all the hairs on my body stand up on end.
私は佐久間の思考を読んだ。何を考えてそんな言葉が出てくるのか知らなければと思った。
Cherika let out a long breath as if letting something that had been building up inside her.
あいつは言葉以上のことを考えていなかった。頭の中にはただ面白いという声だけが反響していた。あいつは異常だ。よく快楽殺人と言われるものがあるが、それですらない。自分にとって面白いかどうかだけが重要で、その行為が殺人かどうかにさえ興味がないんだ。あいつに気持ちを寄せるな、理解しようとするな。優しい父親だったという思い込みを捨てろ。
別にそんなつもりはない。
違う。お前はまだ佐久間に対して何かを期待している。でもあいつにとっては食後のお前たちとの談笑も残虐な殺人も同じことなんだぞ。
そんなつもりないって言ってるだろ。
I couldn't tell how my confused thoughts appeared to Cherika. Because I didn't know how I felt myself. Dad was trying to join some organization called the Committee. That's why he was going to kill me and put an end to the case. I was tired of hearing that.
それをすぐに受け入れろって言われたって無理に決まってるだろ。
Just then, just 10 hours ago, Dad, the lazy guy who drank too much, the doctor everybody loved. Cherika started to silently tear off the packing tape.
ここは外科じゃないからな。手術道具が置いてあるとは思えない。それより奥の机の一番下の引き出しを見てくれ。
何？
クルス・ノノがよく使っていた机だ。そこに裁縫道具が入っているだろう。
Kurisu had indeed kept sewing tools in there to patch up the buttons back onto Dad's white coat. Did she learn that by reading Kurisu's mind? I was angry, but I did what she said anyway. There was a bag filled with sewing tools there like always. I gave them to Cherika and she grabbed a needle and thread at random. She disinfected them and started to wordlessly sew up her stomach. Seeing the sewing needle stick into Sarika's pale white skin was worse than seeing the wound itself. She showed no hesitation and no sign of being in pain.
こいつ、今までどんな生活を。
Our eyes met. I forced myself to think of something else before she could answer my question.
父さんは僕やお前をどこに呼び出したんだ。
Sarika finished her stitches and tore off the end of the thread.
すべての始まりとなった場所。その始まりの時刻に来いと言っていただろう。
わかんねえか、今回の事件。いや、6年前の事件も含めて全てが始まった場所だよ。そう、そこだよ。ついでに時間も合わせようじゃねえか。あの時あの場所でってやつだ。
That's what he said. The place where everything
お
began.
前や久野里が考えた通り、元凶は渋谷自身にある。あれはとある装置が爆発したせいで引き起こされたものだ。そしてお前たちが発生因子と呼んでいるもの、実際はある特殊な電磁波だが、それが拡散、それによって望まれない能力者が覚醒することになった。
渋谷自身が人工地震だったっていう陰謀論は事実だったのか。
そういうことになるな。お前たちもフリージアで話していたが、その装置はかつて渋谷駅前のプラネタリウムに密かに設置されていた。
Kunisata had been the one to tell me that. Some company had bought the planetarium and used it to do
でもあそ
experiments.
こは今ヒカリオが立ってるだろ。
そう。だが、ヒカリオの中にかつてのプラネタリウムの DNA を引き継ぐというコンセプトのもと、新たに建造された施設がある。それがシアターキューブだよ。
え？
The Theater Cube, a huge theater located inside the Hikariwo. It was used for musicals and famous performance groups from both inside and outside Japan. It was the largest part of I'm sorry, I'm probably saying it wrong every time. Hikariwo building, and one of its most popular attractions. So it was modeled after the old planetarium.
そういえばあそこには。
I'd gone there just once before. There was a foreign musical playing. I remembered being amazed at the size of the place and the luxurious design. But what I remembered best was the faces and the people I had gone with. Yui, Yuto, and Nono and Dad. I think it was to celebrate Nono and I making it to Hekio Academy. We made it into Hekio, which offered free tuition for earthquake orphans. And Dad had joked, this frees up a lot of cash, and bought us expensive front row seats. Nono had gotten mad at him and told him he was wasting money. Thinking back, that was the first time the five of us had ever gone anywhere as a family. It was a memory I treasured. But
なんで父さんはそんなところを選んだんだろう。
Onoe closed her eyes for a moment.
おそらくはお前だ、宮代拓。
僕。
今回の復興祭、光王はその中心の役割を担っていて、大勢の人間が集まっている。あいつは声明通り、お前を衆目の中、自殺に見せかけて殺すつもりだろう。
Using his mind control, she continued.
それに、復興祭の昼のイベントさえ終わってしまえば、夜の劇場は巨大な無人スペースになる。万一、ディソードで切り合う羽目になっても、人目を避けられる。始まりの場所に来い、などと大行なことを言っていたが、あいつが何の意図もなく場所と時間を指定するはずがない。
ってことは、時間っていうのは
午後10時28分。
What time is it right now? I would never forget that time. It was when the Shibuya earthquake struck.
午後10時28分をもって復興祭の雰囲気は一変する。それまでのお祭り騒ぎから参加者全員が黙祷を捧げ、渋谷は静寂に包まれる。そんな中、自殺の声明を出したお前が登場するわけだ。どうなるか想像がつくだろう。あのクズめ。
There was a disgust in her words. But it wasn't rage. It sounded like she was suffering somehow. Why, Sarika? If you're that angry, if you're in that much pain.
なんでお前はずっと父さんに従っていたんだよ。
何度も言っている。私を生み出した時のことは覚えているだろう。
Sarika, save me. Please, please.
お願いだから、僕に。
あの時、お前は自らの生存を助けてくれる私を望んだ。私はそのようにして生まれた。それ以外に優先させる目的など私には存在しない。そのために他のすべてを捨ててきた。お前に生み出されたあの瞬間から私はそうやって生きてきたんだ。いや、そう生きることを与えられて私は生まれたんだ。お前を生かすためであれば、相手が佐久間だろうと誰だろうと黙って従う。
I couldn't speak. If what Sarika said was true, then the real cause behind all this.
責任を感じる必要はないぞ、宮代拓。
I shuddered reflexively as she read my mind.
お前はこれまで何も知らなかった。ギガロマニアックスのことも、その存在の裏で暗躍する連中がいることも。だから、これはお前のせいじゃない。
The feelings that pained me deep inside my heart came boiling up.
いいのかよ。
I forced myself to speak the words.
お前はそれでいいのかよ。
That's right. Even if I created Sarika, even if I'd given her a reason to live.
ユイやノノを殺したんだぞ。
That was what I wanted. The kind, gentle Sarika Onoe, the kind, gentle Sarika Onoe I knew would never want that. She had to keep me alive? Even if it meant losing Nono and Yui? Even if it meant killing them? That wasn't what the two of us wanted. Was she really willing to give up everything else for the goal she'd been given? That wasn't human.
本当にただの人形みたいじゃないか。
Sarika didn't move. She just looked back at me.
そろそろ行く。
She was the first person to break the silence. She tossed the old packing tape, then used gauze she'd put on her wounds. And she remain and the remainder of the fresh bandages into the trash and adjusted her clothes.
渋谷から出た後はしばらくはおとなしくしていろ。取るべき行動は久野里美代が指示してくれるだろう。
She headed for the door of the exam room. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She put her hand on the doorknob and without looking back said,
夜までここにいるつもりだったが、山添雨季の能力が割と厄介だ。今余計なことをされると困る。それに、お前の心変わりが起きても困るしな。
何？
But before I could say anything more, the door opened. Shinjo was standing there. I wasn't sure how long he had been there. He looked down at Serika, seemingly trying to keep his emotions in check.
なるほど。迷っているのか。
君は殺人犯だ。
He blocked Serika's path as he spoke.
どんな事情があるにせよ。そしてその事情が常識で測れないものであっても、殺人は殺人だ。法によって君は裁かれなければならない。
そうだろうな。
Serika's voice was calm.
それに今回の事件は尊敬していた先輩の弔い合戦でもある。
The two of them stood facing each other. The air was thick with tension between them. They stood like that for almost a full minute. I couldn't see Serika's face from here, but Shinjo's expression seemed to waver once in a while. He probably knew that Serika was reading his mind, so he was thinking the things he wanted her to know. It felt like there was a silence, but in intense discussion going on between them. Eventually, Shinjo sighed a little. He moved to the side with pained expression on his face.
いいんだな。
復興祭が終わった後、上層部からどんな圧力がかかってこようと、俺は君と佐久間を追う。どこへ逃げようとな。
お前が追うのは一人で済む。生き残るのは私か佐久間のどちらかだけだ。
She went to walk out of the room at a pace which belied her injury.
宮代拓。
She stopped, and without looking back, she said,
生き残れよ。何があっても。お前だけは生き残れ。
and then she disappeared.
あまり思い詰めるなよ。
何をですか。
いや。
He scratched his head, then checked the time and frowned.
警察は厳戒態勢で復興祭の警備に当たっている。俺もこの後、一旦ここを離れなくちゃいけない。その間、代わりの警官が来る。そうだな。ウキ君の部屋に隠れているといい。君がいるとは思ってないから、探しはしないはずだ。
はい。
おそらく戻りは夜になる。そのタイミングで渋谷を離れよう。準備を。
わかりました。
I answered him, but my body wouldn't move. My hands were clutched tight, and I hadn't even realized it. I felt so frustrated, so angry and disgusted with myself. All these horrible things were going on around me, and someone else had already decided how I was going to escape them. I'd done nothing at all. Shinjo seemed to be about to say something else, but instead, he left the room silently. The clock said it was 10 p.m. I was supposed to be getting ready to leave Shibuya, but I couldn't leave Alba dorm right now. And most of the stuff in my room was already taken by the police. There wasn't much for me to do. It might just be to avoid the warrant, but it was clear from the way Serika and Kunasato were talking that there was probably another reason. Something that had to do with psychics. And something that had to do with Chaos Child Syndrome. I quickly closed my eyes and shook my head. No, don't do it. Don't try to figure it out. Remember, you're promised to Nono. You've already learned what happens when you try to find out about things you're not supposed to know, right? I looked up and saw Kunasato and Arimura by the door. They were at the front desk, next to the exam room the whole time. Kunasato entered the exam room. Arimura followed after, but when she saw the bandages and tape in the waste bucket, she looked at me angrily. I sounded a little guilty as I said it, but all Arimura said was, "I know." But the look on her face was strange. It was as if she blamed me, but wasn't able to say it out loud.
なんだ?
え?
他にも何か言いたいことはあるんじゃないのか? 言ってくれよ。もう隠し事はたくさんなんだ。
そうですね。
Arimura looked at Kunasato for a moment, but evidently it was okay for her to tell me because she continued.
セリ、尾上セリカはなんて言ってましたか？
というと、
いろいろ話してましたよね。よく聞こえなかったけど、声はしてたから。
そうだな。
I gave them both a brief version of what Serika had told me. Kunasato crossed her arms and thought for a moment, then whispered to herself.
やはりな。お前、どう考えている？
何がです？
尾上の言い分だ。
どうって。
I didn't even think about it. None of the things she had to say were what I wanted to hear.
たとえ僕が彼女を生み出してしまったとしても、どうしても納得できないというか。
違う。そういうことじゃない。
Kunasato raised a hand to cut me off.
あいつがしたことは許されない。それはどんな理由を振りかざそうと変わらない。私が聞いているのはそういうことではなく、あいつが昨べ事件に関して説明したことだ。お前はどう思った？
昨べ尾上が話したこと。
What did I think? She told the truth, right? Arimura had heard the whole thing and used her powers to check it. But Arimura looked down at her feet and said softly,
宮代先輩、覚えてますか？伊藤先輩とゆいさんの事件の後、私が言ったこと。
え？
私がもっと注意深く能力を使っていれば、伊藤先輩の言葉がどこかおかしいって気づけたはずだって。
もう
Arimura had regretted that deeply. But what did that have to do with Serika? I looked at her face and suddenly figured out what she meant. Was there something that Serika had said?
嘘があったのか。
いえ、彼女は確かに真実を語っていました。
でも
なんか変なんです。うまく言えないけど、真実すぎるというか。
Too true.
なんだよそれ。
私、ずっと注意深く聞いてました。私の能力って相手の言葉が本当か嘘か分かりますけど、人の言葉っていつも白黒はっきりしてるわけじゃないです。話してる時っていろいろ迷ったり曖昧になったり、自分でも何言ってるか分からなくなったり、とにかくちゃんとしてないですよね。だから普通は本当のことを話しててもぼんやりとしたグレーみたいな部分が混じってるものなんです。
人間が言葉を発するという行為は常に理路整然とした思考の上で行われているわけじゃないからな。理性と感情が入り混じり、時に論旨は飛躍し、会話の道筋はひどく不安定だ。
Kunosato added.
彼女の尾上セリカの言葉は全てまっすぐだったんです。まるでシナリオでも用意されていて、それを読んでいるみたいに。
それにあいつの話そのものにも気に入らない点がある。
Kunosato sat down in the chair without asking permission.
フリージアであいつの話を聞いていた時は愚かなことに私も頭に血が上っていてな。冷静に考えられなかった。だがここへ来る途中、ふと疑問が浮かんで、そこから検討をしてみた。だから尾上に思考盗撮されるわけにいかなかったんだ。
ああ、それで。
Last night, Serika had stayed in the exam room instead of coming up to the living room and talking with everyone else. That was the reason.
本格的におかしいと思ったきっかけは、夕べの電話でのやりとりだ。あいつは私に、お前を渋谷から逃がすように言った。それが、お前を生存させることにつながると。
ええ。
I remembered her saying that. Ayamura seemed to be suspicious of the words suspicious that her words were too true. But they seemed like the truth to me.
確かに、お前を渋谷から逃がすということ自体は筋が通っている。お前にとっての脅威になってしまった佐久間を殺すという選択もな。だが、私にお前を託すというのが矛盾していないか？
I didn't know what she meant. What seemed strange about it?
あいつはどうして私にお前を託したと思う？
だから久野里さんは何か知ってるんでしょう。僕らの知らない何かを。尾上はそれを
差し引いてだ。そもそもあいつの存在意義がお前の生存にあるのなら、お前が最後の時を迎える瞬間までずっと一緒にいなくてはならないはずだ。違うか？
だからそれは通す。佐久間のせいで予定が狂って。
Arimura interrupted me.
確かに彼女はそう言っていましたし、嘘はありませんでした。でも嘘じゃないのはおかしいと思いませんか？
は？
I stared at her, uncertain of what she meant.
そう。あいつの言葉は真実に見せかけた嘘かもしれないんだよ。
Kunosato nodded.
真実に見せかけた嘘？
宮代拓を生かし続けるためならば手段は選ばない。あいつはそういう行動をする。
だからそれのどこに嘘が？
佐久間など所詮末端組織の研究者に過ぎ、そんな小物と差し違えて何になる。ただの無駄。委員会は巨大だ。佐久間を殺したところで宮代の安全など全く保証されない。なのに自分が死んでしまってはどうにもならないだろ
う。だから久野里さんに僕を預けるって。
バカを言うな。確かに私はお前をおとりにして委員会の実態を探りたいと思っている。だがお前など不必要になったら簡単に切り捨てる。守り続けるわけがない。尾上セリカは私の思考を読めるんだぞ。そんなことわからないと思うか？
つまり委員会が本当に宮代先輩を狙っているのなら、彼女は先輩のそばから絶対に離れるはずないんです。自分の手でどこまでも先輩を守ろうとするはず。違いますか？
それは。
そしてもう一つ、決定的におかしなことがある。あいつはなぜ最初からお前に真実を告げなかった？
最初？
渋谷地震による昏睡からお前が目覚めた時だよ。お前を生き延びさせることが目的なら真実を隠す必要なんて最初からないんだ。むしろ全てを正直に告げ、能力や委員会に対する情報をお前に与えた方が助かる可能性はずっと高い。そもそもそういった情報があればお前は一連の殺人事件にだって絶対に首を突っ込まなかっただろう。わざわざ危険な目に遭うことだってなかった。
ね、なんか変でしょ先輩。
She was right. I didn't realize it until they told me. I never would have done the things I did if I'd known what Serika had told me last night. Just like Kunosato said, I would have stayed away. In fact, I might have done something to keep us away from it. If I had, Nono and Yui might still. But
なんで？
why had she hidden the truth? It's like
逆に宮代先輩を危険な目に遭わせようとしてるみたいですよね。
Arimura said the same thing I was thinking.
でも尾上の言葉が嘘だなんてありえないだろう。昨夜は有村がそばにいたんだから。
いえ、方法がないこともないんです。私の能力の盲点をつく方法が。
有村の能力の盲点。
I remembered what Arimura had just said. Everything Serika had said was the truth. But it was too true. It was as if she was reading from a script. I found it. There was one way to get through Arimura's power.
まさか伊藤の時と同じ。
Arimura nodded slowly.
はい。私が伊藤先輩の異常を見過ごしてしまった。それと同じ方法なら。
思考誘導。
That meant there might be a bit of hope.
つまり尾上は佐久間に思考誘導されていて、あんなことをしたのは伊藤と同じように操られていただけで。
But Arimura didn't look any better when I asked her.
私も それなら少しは救われるなって思ったんですけど。
あくまでも可能性の一つだ。それにすがるな。
だそうです。
そうか。
My shoulders slumped.
先輩。
妙な期待はするな。それすら罠かもしれん。
はい、わかってます。
I spoke clearly. I thought I was telling the truth. But Arimura looked down as if she was in pain.
今、嘘をついたのか。僕は。
Kunosato must have figured out what I was thinking because her expression became more stern.
私も思考誘導の線は考えている。でも、それも腑に落ちないんだ。佐久間が己の思考を操って、わざわざ仲間割れを演出する理由は何だ？
She was right. There was no reason for Dad to do that. If he'd sent Serika as an assassin, I would have been dead already. The two of us had even been along together, and Serika had done nothing. I knew it. There was no point in hoping that Serika was really just a normal girl who didn't know anything. I should have been able to tell from watching her last night. The way she talked, the way she acted, the way she behaved towards everyone else. It was all different than the Serika I knew before. If mind control was involved, she would have acted like the Serika I knew. Because... and I hated myself for saying it. If she had been the old Serika, I couldn't have brought myself to hate her. I would have thought for a long time and then maybe forgiven her. And then, like an idiot, I would have done exactly what Dad wanted and only regretted it the instant I was killed.
Miyashiro.
Kunisato's expression was as fierce as ever.
はい。
よく考えろ。もしかすると、これが重大な鍵かもしれない。昨日も聞いたことだが、地震の時、お前は何を望んだ？その結果、尾上がリアルブートされたのだとしたら、あいつに何を求めたんだ？本当にあいつは、お前を生存させることが目的なのか？
I remembered what it had been like back then. I remembered the hellish sights around me, the horrible headache, and I remembered begging Serika to help me. Serika said it was her goal to keep me alive, to save my life, literally. There was a brief but strong pain in my head. I pressed my hand to my forehead. Whenever I remembered that, the pain came back.
大丈夫ですか?
Arimura had been through the same pain, so she was worried. I raised my hand and told her I was okay.
とにかく助けてくれと言った気がします。
I couldn't remember if I'd barely been able to get the words out, or if I'd shouted them at the top of my lungs, or if I hadn't even said them aloud at all. But I can remember asking Serika for help.
だけど。
Was it really all I asked for? Back then, There was a new pain. This time I could feel a throbbing in my temples. I pressed my hand harder into my head, and the nails dug into the skin. My whole body staggered, and I collapsed to the floor. There was a warm sensation on my shoulders. Arimura was trying to help me out.
ごめん、大丈夫。
嘘です。
Arimura led me over to the bed in the corner of the exam room. I wanted to lie down right away, but...
いや、ダメだ。新庄さんが代わりの警官が来るって言ってたから、ウキの部屋に隠れてろって。
じゃあ、もういいですから、上に行きましょう。
I nodded and thanked her as she held me by my shoulder. By the shoulder. I forced my body to softly push off her and stand up on its own.
久野里さんもすいません。
She sighed in resignation and shook her head. It's fine, she said.
どのみち、尾上がここにいない以上、情報の裏付けは取れないしな。お前の話だと、尾上は今夜10時28分にシアターキューブに現れるということだが、残念ながら私では能力者2人を相手にして立ち回りを演じることはできそうにない。ハンドガンも久し...
Arimura turned to Kunasato, surprised as if she'd fired a gun. Kunasato seemed unusually hesitant, but said,
仕方がない。尾上の言うことにはどこか矛盾があるとはいえ、今はそれを探る時間も人も全く足りない。とりあえずだが、予定通り新庄さんが戻ってくるのを待って渋谷を脱出する。もし何らかの企みがそこにあるなら乗ってやるまでだ。
I went to Uki's room to hide before the police officer got here, and found Yuto curled up asleep on her bed. He must have been crying for a long time because he was red around the eyes and I could see tear marks on his cheeks. Uki was sitting on the bed softly holding his hand. She'd probably been like that for a long time. It seemed very natural for her to do.
ちゃんとお姉さんしてるんだな。
いえ、私なんてまだ。
Her voice was soft and kind, so as to not wake Yuto. But there was a loneliness mixed in with her words. I could see that she was looking at a photo on the desk. It was a picture of Yui and Uki. I couldn't tell when it was taken. Yui was hugging Uki from behind and pressing her cheek up against Uki's blushing face. I thought about the person who'd taken this picture. If it wasn't one they'd taken themselves, someone had to have taken it. Yeah, that's usually how it works, right? It wasn't Yuto. If Yuto was there, he'd be standing in between the two of them. And Dad wasn't into taking photographs, which meant it was probably Nono. I could tell what Uki was thinking when she looked at it. She was thinking about when Nono had taken the picture.
出発は夜になるって。準備できてる？はい、一応は。でも、よくわからなくて。
Neither did I. It wasn't that I didn't know what to take. I didn't know what was happening to me. I hadn't even been told where we're going, except that we were leaving Shibuya.
とりあえず、一旦離れるだけだから、心配しなくていいと思うよ。はい。
Uki smiled just a little as Arimura's attempt to make her feel better.
お前は大丈夫なのか？
大丈夫っすよ。前から旅に出てみたかったんで。
She was joking around, probably because Uki was here. It felt like old times, and I smiled a little. Of course she wasn't okay. She was leaving town and where we lived, and with no notice at all. And she was leaving because someone wanted to kill her.
なんて言うんですかね、こういうの。バンドワゴン？ん？バンドでワゴン？
No. And that second one doesn't even make any sense. I suddenly realized that Kazuki was in the corner of the room chewing dry squid. I hadn't seen that in a while either. It was kind of a relief.
花、ユウトが起きちゃうから。ん？はあ、着替え足りるかな。買わなきゃダメか。
Arimura tugged at her outfit as she spoke.
有村さん、よかったら。よかったら、その、ののさんの使ってください。ののさんの部屋にありますから。
Arimura froze. She clearly didn't know what to say.
いや、でもそれは。いいんです。ね、タクルさん。
I was a little surprised. For a moment, she looked like Nono or Yui. She'd probably decided that she'd protect Yuto, and so she was trying to be a big sister like they were. I nodded to both of them.
なあ、ノノはどんなものでも無駄にするのが大嫌いだったから、もらってやってくれないか。
けど、先輩。
いいんだ。
Aimura seemed a little surprised, but her face finally took on a serious expression.
わかりました。もらっていきます。はい。うん。
あ。
Aimura ran over to Nono's room to get the clothes before the policeman came. I decided I should probably check if there were any clothes left in my room, then stood up. I tried to leave the room quietly, so as not to wake up Yuto, and then I stopped.
地震の時、お前は何を望んだ？その結果、尾上がり。
I remembered what Kunisato had just said. Ah! Sorry, my cat. My cat. She's scratching me. Or kinda, she's not scratching. She just forgot to put her claws away is all. I remember what Kunisato had just said. I looked around as if trying to find the answer to a problem I couldn't solve. And then I saw Uki holding Yuto's hand as he softly moaned in pain. I don't have to know, do I? I don't have to think about the things I don't know. This is the right thing to do. If I endured that headache long enough, I could probably find the answer. But I gave up and left Uki's room to go get ready instead. November 6, 2015, Friday. A little after 4 p.m. We're going back in time? What if... I'm getting very tired. What if we go ahead... I know it's the last chapter, I know. What if we save it for next time? And then we'll have something else. We'll plan something else after, because it probably won't be that, I don't know how long this will take, actually. Maybe it'll end up being 3 hours again, who knows. For getting to the end of it. But yeah, let's go ahead and save. There we go. Whoop! My cat's trying to grab the controller. You silly kitty. Do you have any parting words for everyone, little kitty cat? Nope, she doesn't. She's gonna go lay down. Okay. Well, thank you for coming and watching. Bye bye.